everyone. A little bit later in the program, we will be speaking with two members of Healthcare for the Homeless Houston, Charlotte Garner and Paige Taylor, about their work and this wonderful organization's work in our community.
We're joined by all four members of the Apollo Chamber Players and also by composer Pierre Jalbert, who is responsible for the 17th of the 20 by 2020 Apollo commissions, a piece entitled L'Esprit du Nord. Matt, how did you come to hook up with Pierre for this commission?
Well, as you've seen from previous episodes, we've kind of connected with different composers for various reasons. Some composers, we've asked them to write something inspired by their ethnicity, and some have had no connection to the specific cultural or folkloric elements that we had requested them to compose a piece on. In Pierre's case, he was someone that we had on our radar for quite some time, and it just sort of worked out with these last few commissions to get in touch with him. And he came back with me and he said, I've never explored my French-Canadian ancestry in my work, and I'd love to take on that challenge.
We should also say that Pierre is on the faculty at the Shepherd School at Rice University, and both yourself and Matthew are graduates, and maybe Whitney as well.
Yes, me as well.
From the Rice, from the Shepherd School at Rice University. So, Pierre, exploring your French-Canadian roots, what was this like for you?
Well, it seemed very natural. Actually, most of my older music, I really didn't explore folk elements as much, but in some of my more recent music, I've been doing that some more. But it was really of great interest for me because I felt like it's sort of where I came from. I grew up in northern Vermont. Every time we have a family get-together, all the relatives, none of them studied music, but they all played instruments by ear. They'd get out the guitars or go to the piano, and we'd start singing, mostly American folk tunes and popular tunes, but also French-Canadian folk songs. So I wanted to kind of that to be the basis of a whole piece. And I felt like it provided sort of an impetus to go and to explore something new.
You have three movements. The first one is the Chanson de Lisette, then Cantique, and finally Fiddle Song. Talk about the folk elements in each of those movements. Are they based on specific tunes, or are they your interpretation of some of those songs that you heard the family performing?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Some of these are not, some of these folk songs, I did a lot of research into this, and they're not necessarily widely well-known tunes, but they really spoke to me and I wanted to do something with them. My goal was really to present the music in two ways. One was to present the tunes simply at some point in the piece, but also to transform it into my own, so that there's a sort of cross-pollination between the two. The first movement is basically a theme and variations based on this folk tune, which you hear towards the beginning of the piece, and it becomes sort of more and more developed, and the musical language kind of changes gradually through the piece and becomes more modern, sort of my own musical language. And then the second movement uses these field recordings from the 1940s, which I found, which are basically tunes that were recorded just of people out in the field singing. And so this one particular tune that you'll hear at the beginning is just a lone woman singing this, it's a passion, religious folk song. And the reason I was so drawn to this is because it sounds modal, but it seems to have more than one center of tonality, and there are these kind of embellishments that she does with the tune that are really interesting. I mean, it's just a very simple, this is not a professional singer singing this piece. This is just an average person singing it, but I just felt there was something so powerful in that. And so you hear that towards the beginning of the second movement. And then there's also a second folk tune in the movement called Les Pèlerins, which is a pilgrimage, a religious pilgrimage of these travelers. And then the third movement is sort of more direct in a way. It's a fiddle dance, uses some fiddle tunes, actually has an optional field recording of, again from the 1940s, of someone playing harmonica and spoons, like you might find at a small sort of folk get-together. And then you have this rhythm, which represents this foot stomping technique that's used in a lot of French Canadian fiddling, where they're actually stomping their feet to a rhythm. And so you get that also as a key element in that piece. But this is, the third movement is sort of more virtuosic, fun, kind of straightforward movement.
Well, Annabelle, as one of the fiddlers in the Apollo Chamber Players, let me ask you about how you received this piece when you first saw it for the first time and started to look through it. Do you remember what your immediate reaction was?
It's interesting. It looks in the page pretty straightforward, and my part looks simple at first, and then once you put it all together, then you realize there's so many more layers happening there. And I think it's very interesting to see how a composer takes a seemingly simple folk tune that somebody's singing and transforms it into this more complex rendition and adding their own voice to it. So that's what always strikes me. And I always, with each different composer, it's such a different interpretation and such a different journey with that folk element.
Whitney, Pierre mentioned that some of the movements involve these field recordings, these pre-taped elements. From your perspective as a string quartet, what's it like to be playing with these pre-recorded elements? It's something obviously that you've done quite frequently. Does it change anything for you as performers?
Yes, and that's a great question. I really think that it does, because once you listen to the field recording, like Pierre said, the person singing it isn't a professional singer, but yet there's so much depth, and the way that she maybe embellishes some of the notes or sings with a straight tone, that definitely inspired our approach as an ensemble into how we played the second movement of that quartet, at least, because it's just so evocative the way she sings that. And then in the third movement, listening to the spoons and all that kind of stuff, it puts us in the mood for the romping, fiddly part of the third movement.
Matthew, does Pierre make you do the stomping?
There's no literal stomping, no. Although we have had to do that in other works. But we do get some, there's some knocking. So there's a few places where I have to knock on the ribs to make a percussive sound. There's a few like pizzicato glissandos, which have give a fun effect, right? And there's a couple of places I think where the whole ensemble takes a glissando all the way to as like absolutely high as you can play. So I think that's in the slow movement and the middle movement too. So there's some fun sort of extended techniques thrown in there for sure.
I think one of the things that has really come out of the 20x2020 project, Matt, is obviously, when you're dabbling in these folk elements, fiddling becomes a more expansive part of your performance repertoire. Is that true?
The feeling. Sorry, I missed.
Sorry, fiddling.
Fiddling. Oh yes, it does. It definitely does. And in my case, I grew up fiddling alongside performing Mozart and Bach. So I feel like in a way that's what birthed the idea of Apollo and what we do. Just recently, when reworking the piece for these episodes and recording for a new album, we did some research on some French folk fiddling. And I think there was just, a lot for me to learn from some of these recordings that are out there on YouTube. And I think it helps the final product kind of bridge the divide between folk elements and my classical training.
It's interesting when we think of quote unquote classical music, it's very codified. There's a whole tradition of how things are written and how they're played. And when it comes to incorporating these folk elements, as you point out, Pierre, it's the classical tradition is not always as malleable to incorporate those folk elements as you might like. And so you, as the composer, have to come up with ways of actually getting this down on paper and then communicating that to the performers.
Exactly, and it's partially it's the rhythm. Like I said, it's at least in this particular melody, it's completely free. So you're just trying to grab a classical rhythm here or there that might somehow be close to what they do, but it's not quite. And then there's all this stuff in between the notes. So you can use quarter tones or whatever, but it's still never quite exactly that. But that's okay, because even if this is a recording, but if anybody sang this melody, if a different person sang it, it's going to be different. So that's the nice thing about this. It will be different every time, and that's the great thing about live performance too.
Well, before we go, I want to ask Pierre that you are currently in New York. You've been up there on sabbatical for the year. You and your family, is everybody safe and well?
Yes, I can say everybody's doing well. Yes, so far.
And during this pandemic and this lockdown, you have welcomed a new member of your family as well.
That's right. Norma Grace, our grandchild, was recently born in the midst of the pandemic. So that's been some wonderful good news for this time.
Have you actually been able to see her and hold her in person, or has it all been via Zoom?
Most of it has been via Zoom, but more recently we got to visit. So it's been, finally got to see her in person, yeah.
Great.
Well, congratulations on the new member of the family.
Thank you, Pierre.
And thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, welcome Charlotte, Garner, and Paige Taylor. We have a new segment on our virtual festival 20 by 2020, episode 17. We wanted to give voice to an organization in Houston that has been helping some of those that have been impacted the most during the pandemic, and that is the homeless population of Houston. So we wanted to invite these two wonderful ladies that are associated with the organization on the episode today. They can tell us a little bit more about their stories and more about HHH. Paige, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Maybe you could start. We could start by you telling us a little bit more about yourself and your association with Healthcare for the Homeless Houston, known as HHH, and what the mission of the organization is.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for having us, Matt and Annabelle and Apollo. So this is so fun for me because this is merging two groups that I really care about and support in Houston. I've been involved with Healthcare for the Homeless Houston for the past few years as a board member. And I came to the organization through the Charity Navigator, actually. They're very highly ranked as an association that takes donations and puts them direct to use in their mission. So the mission of Healthcare for the Homeless is to provide comprehensive care for people experiencing homelessness in Houston. And I really like to think of it as treating the whole person. So it's not just acute healthcare that they provide, but also they have behavioral and mental health services, psychiatric services. They have a really beautiful dental clinic and offer a lot of dental services there. And they also have social services and social workers who meet with the clients who come in. So somebody who comes to Healthcare for the Homeless, they might be coming because they have some tooth pain or they have diabetes that they need help getting under control, but they really receive so many more services than just attention to that one need. So there are several different clinics in Houston. The main clinic is on Caroline Street downtown, but Healthcare for the Homeless also does work in permanent supportive housing and outreach to shelters downtown. So they really have a wide reach in the community here.
Sounds like a very holistic approach to addressing the issue.
It is. And medicine in general is really heading in that direction. So I think they're on the leading edge of having these care pods where you have multiple healthcare workers working together to really make sure that patients get that integrative care.
Well, thank you, Paige, for telling us more about HHAs. And now I would like to ask Charlotte Garner here a question. We would like to learn more about the personal experience from you. So could you tell us, please, just more about yourself and about how you came to Houston and became involved with the organization?
Yes, thank you so very much, Annabelle. And thank you, Paige. She did a wonderful job iterating what the comprehensiveness of Healthcare for the Homeless Houston, as we lovingly call HHH, does for people. I am an individual, formerly homeless, who arrived in Houston, Texas, with just 32 cents in my pocket and the clothes on my back. I had such a string of comorbidities that it would have been easier to ask me what I didn't need rather than what I did. And shortly thereafter, I was referred to Healthcare for the Homeless Houston. And when I came through their doors, I began to receive services, comprehensive services. But more importantly than the services I received was the manner in which the services were dispersed. You see, Healthcare for the Homeless mission statement says that their mission is to provide health, hope, and dignity for those affected by homelessness through the accessible, which is very important, and comprehensive quality care. I began to be able to receive, first of all, mental services because I had several mental diagnoses. As a matter of fact, at the time, I had been receiving mental services care for about 25 years, yet had failed to be able to reach any consistent functionality. I can remember going back to junior high school when I was a small kid. I only had two passions: my music. I played the clarinet, the bassoon, and the tenor sax, and poetry. I'm a spoken word artist as well. I had lost feeling and touch for all things life related. But when I got there, they made me feel like I was somebody. But not only that, they were able to rekindle and infuse in me my worth as a person. I always say that the people who serve the homeless community have to have a calling to do that type of work, as well as the people with generosity in their hearts that feel and understand the need and choose to give to those individuals such as myself. I won't take you through every single solitary detail of what my life was, but I will share with you that since uniting with Healthcare for the Homeless Houston, I have received an associate's degree in human service technology. I have received a bachelor's degree in psychology. I am presently one internship away from receiving my master's in nonprofit management. I have become a performing spoken word artist, and I perform on the stage of the Improv Comedy Club as well as the Midtown Arts Theater of Houston.
Sure, I was just going to ask where viewers can see you perform, and do you have social media page or Instagram or Facebook as well?
I do have a Facebook page, and my stage name, my original stage name was Essie Leland.
Right.
This is Leland right here. It's my father.
Oh.
And next to him is Essie, my grandmother.
Oh, sweet.
Those were the people who never gave up on me as long as they lived, but they didn't live long enough to see me achieve the things that I have achieved since I encountered the help of healthcare for the homeless. So many people that receive homeless services have to go to numerous different networks in order to receive what they need. However, that's not my testimony. All my needs, housing, all the referrals that I needed, I found them in one place. And so I've only been a product of Healthcare for the Homeless Houston. 12 years ago, I joined their Consumer Advisory Board. And for the last 5 years, going on 6 in June, I have been the chair of that board. And it's through going to fundraising events, and then I met Paige. And she kind of embraced me and encouraged me. And it gave a face to guys such as yourself, Matthew, and you, Annabelle, and as well as Paige, people who take up this cause. And it's such a worthy cause. And that's why I shared my achievements, because I want to let anybody that would donate know that your dollars, your generosity, your assistance, your time, your talent, and your treasures makes a difference to someone like me.
Charlotte, thank you so much for sharing your powerful story. It sounds like you are a wonderful success story of Healthcare for the Homeless Houston. And for this entire episode, we are taking donations, and 100% of those donation gifts will go towards HHH. So for all of you viewers out there, please be generous with your giving. The mission of Apollo Chamber Players is to connect communities and cultures through globally inspired music. And I see, our vision encompassing helping out as many different organizations and people in many different facets in Houston. So I think maybe we have a holistic approach to bringing music to people and helping people find housing and hopefully creating more success stories like yourself, Charlotte. So thank you for sharing that.
And if you don't mind, Matthew,
yes,
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you. How can I say thank you? How can I express my gratitude for the acts of kindness you've shown, for the gifts that you have given impact lives, such as the world has never known? It's such an auspicious honor to speak on behalf of those who receive your help and express as a living example of what it means to someone such as myself. The fate of the world lies in your hands, of generous souls such as you that serve as a bridge of financial disparity, an area we must all transition through. For to address the plight of homelessness demands we join heart and hand. People giving to people who help people is boldly and proactively taking a stand. Healthcare for the Homeless Houston is constantly expanding in new and innovative ways to serve the homeless community with dignity and infuse hope into the lives of those it saves. So to all of you through sacrifice who will share your time, your talent, and your treasures, I offer my heartfelt and sincere gratitude for the value of your generosity I simply cannot measure. Thank you.
That was really beautiful. I hope that all of our viewers are as touched as we are with your story, because you never know. There are so many people that find themselves homeless at some point in their lives, and it's people like you and I. And it sometimes we just need a little help, and that little bit of help, if it comes from an organization such as HHH, can make a world of difference in the life of an individual. So I think it's so important that we do as much as we can to help, and every little bit counts. So we hope that you give and that you keep supporting both arts organizations and humanitarian organizations.
Thank you for being with us, Charlotte and Paige, and be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Suddenly, they heard a mighty scream and beating of wings. Raven flew in and soared over them. Caw, caw. I'll teach you a lesson now.